Investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge has been following this story from the very beginning. She's joining us now live from Washington, D.C. Catherine, thank you very much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So you were outside the Capitol a year ago today. What is the difference in the mood there right now after the president's speech this morning?
Well, it's very muted, very respectful, and sort of contemplative. Earlier, you heard President Biden lay the blame for the riots squarely with former President Trump, and President Trump has now responded, accusing our current president of further dividing Americans on the left and on the right. But as you walk through the corridors here at the Capitol today, you're struck at what the cost has been, especially for these Capitol Hill police officers who are still trying to heal not only physically, but also emotionally a year after the riots.
It's interesting, Catherine, because obviously a year later, we're of course marking the day today, but the Select Committee has been investigating this. They're now considering public hearings in the weeks ahead. Where does their investigation stand? I know there has been some frustration lately from some that perhaps more should have been done by now, but they're making some kind of progress, right?
Right. So the Select Committee is very focused on a narrow window of time on the afternoon of January 6th. They're focused on that period of time just before 1 o'clock local when the first rioters breached the outer perimeter of the Capitol, and then several hours later when then President Trump did that videotaped address to the group and told them to go home and essentially stop the violence. And they're trying to understand what accounted for the delay during that window, and they're trying to get to the former president's state of mind. And that is why they've been asking for the voluntary cooperation of several former White House aides, and then most recently the Fox News host, Sean Hannity, who was exchanging text messages with then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And in those texts, he seems to suggest he thinks then President Trump was getting bad advice about what might have been legally possible on January 6th. And then he also wrote that he was really worried or concerned about what would happen in the 48 hours leading up to January 6th. So the committee zeroing in on that very narrow window, the afternoon of January 6th, the state of mind of then President Trump, and whether others had any inklings or warnings that violence was entirely possible.
Well, 1 year since that very tragic day, but still so many unanswered questions. CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.